Hello everybody. Well, we're another week has gone, just disappeared, and the idea now is to go through another session of questions, trying to explain some of the things that are going on with the race right now, and also give you an update on where the boats are and what they're doing. Now, we had a little bit of a hiccup on that aspect. I had hoped about an hour ago I would have got online on the computer with the tracker and gone through the whole process again like I did last week, using the video animation to show you the movement of the boats, and then overlay the weather and look at the projection of the weather, you know, in the next sort of 4, 5, 6 days, because it's really quite interesting. The bad news is that I think because there's so many people on the tracker, it's a Saturday and so on, the wind overlay at the moment is not working. So what I'll do is I'll keep monitoring that during the rest of the afternoon. It's coming, you know, it's sort of just past midday here, sort of thing. As soon as I see the weather overlay come up, I'll do the update on the boats. Basically, they're all heading south now. They're all going down, so there's not a lot of movement in positions or anything like that. But the weather scenario is really interesting, and also in relation to how their HF radios are working and what weather information they're getting, and everything ties in with that little article I wrote about, you know, HF radios, single sideband radios. Is it winning the race? Boy, I got to tell you, there's some fun stuff going on, but wait until you see the weather that's coming in about 6 or 7 days. It just turns into a mess. So anyway, so I won't, you know, that's really about it for the update on this session. Just stand by and I'll do a video run through when I can show you everything on the computer. So I said about answering questions, and I opened up the questions yesterday. I had some others that came through the week. I had to shut it down because we've got too many questions, but we will do it every week. We'll do a review, and I'll try and keep it going. We've only got about maybe another 40 weeks to go or something, so hopefully we'll get it all, get you some interesting info. So start off, I got one about the relative speed of the boats. You know, generally they're in a few different groups, and obviously some boats are faster than others, but it's a huge variable in there because you've got boat preparation and skipper skills and sail trim and weather and all those. So just specifically on the boats, when we opened the race, we gave a set guideline on the principles of the boats: 32 to 36 feet long, 6,200 kilo minimum displacement, long full keel, rudders on the trailing edge of the keel, fiberglass production boat, you know, approximately 20 boats out of the mould, designed before 1988, all those things, because they were a wholesome range of boats. And in context, they're a heavy displacement ocean voyaging yacht. And the interesting part about that is, because they're heavy displacement, they don't get up and plane very quickly, so it's very hard to drive the boat, even as a sailor, with any huge margin of speed difference. Okay, if you are getting an extra knot out of these boats, you're really making a huge difference. So that was part of the plan, you know, to try and keep the fleet moving together as a group. It's a bit safer when you're in the Southern Ocean. Also part of the plan so that anyone in this event could actually win the race. So you got Captain Coconut back there with a Lalo 34, conservative beam. You know, you've got Tommy in the Suhaili replica. You've got you know, the Russell 36s, of course. You've got Biscay 36. All these different boats. They are generally similar. So they are moving as a fleet. You know, that's the reality. When you look at it now and say, how did we get a lead group, how did we get a middle group, and where did we get the tail enders, there's a reason for that. And often it's equipment, it's the weather, you know, the decisions that they made to cope with the weather. So there's more to it than just boat speed, and that's the beauty of the Golden Globe race. It's a full package, you know. You got to be there at the finish, and so any one of these sailors could still win the race. You know, Jean-Luc and Philippe are boring along out the front there, a lot of experience, you know, Russell 36, good boat. They're sailing really well, but it's still a long way to the finish. You know, Tommy back there plodding along, nice boat, it's showing it can move well. He could come through and win the race. And Arlig, he showed very early on that he was right up there with the leaders, and the boat speed, he's got long waterline. You know, it's one of the shortest boats in the race, but he's got a turn of speed when it all works. So it's this total package thing. So I wouldn't be too bogged down about which boat's fastest. You can work it out on paper. There's a couple of boats that aren't in this race that were approved that could probably just annihilate a Russell 36. There's the Cape Dory 36, an American build boat, hugely powerful boat, big rig, sails. A good skipper gets in one of those, and he could just turn the thing upside down. The same with a Vancouver 34. If you look at the numbers on paper, it's a hot boat. Tapio's got, what I think is a really hot boat as well, and you can see, he's been stressed on building and this, that, and the other. So there's short answer. There's more to it than just the boat. It's a total package thing. Next question was about these pilot charts. Now, I've got Jimmy Cornell's book. All of the entrants have got one of these on board. Okay, Jimmy gave them one of these. This is a pilot charts. Basically, show you the potential wind that you're going to get in any part of the world at any given month. And the way that information is read, and I'm not going to give you a whole tutorial on this, I'm just going to show you the basics. If you look at this wind little arrow thing there, hopefully that's in focus and you can see it. It's an arrow which shows you the potential for the wind direction here coming from that's from the northeast. This one's wind from the east. There's not much happening over in the west over here, and the feathers on the back of these arrows show you if you've got 5 feathers there, that means you're going to get an average of force 5 from that wind direction, and that number there, 47, you've got that direction for 47% of the time. Over here there's very little percentage of wind, so and they've all got arrows 4, so it's all about force 4. Little hole in the middle there, if it's blue, that'll tell you the percentage of calms, and there's 0 calms in that area. If it was in red, it'd show you the percentage of storms over force 7. And these green arrows show you the direction of the currents. I don't know if you can see that as well. So it's very useful information. Now, if I go to an area here, and I'll so that's the North Atlantic for January, March, April, May. It's every month. So this is the North Atlantic for June. We started in July, so this will be for July. You can, what happened there? Upside down here. Wrong side. Okay, so this one's now North Atlantic for July. There's England. You've got, and we started down here in France. A skipper can look at this and he can tell you what the most likely wind direction, wind strength, current, number of calms, number of storms is going to be as you're plotting your track. So it's really very useful information, and that's for the whole way around the world, through the Southern Ocean, the rest of it. Now, if you want to look at this, I'd recommend Jimmy's pilot charts, mainly because it's been updated for climate change. The data for traditional pilot charts came from the Admiralty, the British Admiralty, and over like 100 years, 150 years, all of this weather data was put together, and they issued pilot charts for all sailors, the last 40, 50, 80 years, I forget when they started, and they were very good. But now Jimmy's gone down through the whole thing and put in all the changes in the last sort of 20 years, the last 10 years and so on, so it's all been updated. If you want to get online, some of you will know about CPN, Open CPN. It's like a navigation system. It's free. It's online. If you go to Open CPN pilot charts, you can download all of the usual traditional pilot charts for free. And there's a tutorial there, shows you how to do. So just if you want to have a play now, go Open CPN, go pilot charts. You can get online, you can see all the charts, you can see how it works, and so on. And if you want the latest and greatest, then get Jimmy's copies there. Oh, a funny part here, I'll keep that for later, but in the back of Jimmy's, I should show you this. This is just getting off track here. See that boat there? Beautiful, eh? That's my last boat before I got a Lagoon 450. Anyway, I digress. So next question. Where's the line drawn on modern equipment versus equipment used in the first race? Okay, so as in 1968, when Robin set off, that's the whole principle of this retro concept. And generally we say you can only have the things on board that were available in 1968. Where we move into the modern stuff, first of all, safety. Anything that's under the general umbrella of safety, it's allowed. There's no question about that. So survival suits, life rafts, EPIRBs, satellite phones for emergency use, satellite tracking devices for emergency, all these sorts of things, that's second nature. The issue about electricity, we see that as safety. So we've allowed modern alternators on their engines with regulator controllers. We've allowed solar panels. We've okayed wind generators and water generators. And then even when it comes to lights, like navigation lights and so on, it's obvious that LED lights are a lot better than a globe light. So we've allowed LED lights as well. We don't allow, all the usual things you know of, like iPods, iPhones, computers, electric autopilots, any of that stuff, that's all gone. One of the classics that we get often asked is, why have we got roller furling head sails? Okay, so in Suhaili, Robin wasn't using roller furling head sails. Neither was Joshua Benabatesia. But here's a little out clause, because there's a bit of a grey area here. On Suhaili, this boom is actually a roller reefing mainsail. He has a worm gear on the boom gooseneck there. He had a handle he could roll up, so he'd actually roll up his sail. So he had roller furling sails. Okay, and the other thing, I'm a great believer, as some of you probably know, that head sail reefing systems now are very reliable, and they are a safety aid. When you're up on the bow of the boat, any sailor would much prefer to pull a rope, right, and get rid of that sail than have to be on the bow, dropping the sail, bag it, drag it down below, bring another sail up, clip it on, hoist it up, back and forwards to the mast, all those different issues that you go through. You're exposed to injury, you're exposed to cold environments or hot environments. It just adds an element of risk that I believe puts the head sail furling gears into a category where it's both performance but it's also safety. So I made the decision very early on that we would allow head sail furling gears. Things like rope jammers on the mast, a lot of the boats are second hand, they've been bought and they've already got the rope jammers, self-tailing winches. I think we've discussed this before. We allow that because we don't want to get them throw the winches away. So that's the general principles behind where we draw the line. We try to be as retro as we can, but we've got to be sensible at the same time. Another question. Okay, where is our wig okay? And this is interesting because when we have the tracking system going and we see a boat stop, which is out of context because the weather overlay is suggesting there's plenty of wind, when he stops, people get worried. So why has he stopped? Why is he doing this, that and the other? And in every instance, if you do put the weather overlay on, you'll see that they are actually waiting for wind, or on occasion, it's been a breakdown on the boat. If someone has a problem, they go and stop. They're not doing the normal thing. What we've done, we actually monitor the tracking very closely because it's like a safety aid for us. Dare it never happens, touch wood, say one of the sailors fell overboard, obviously he might go onto an unusual track, and we have in our crisis management system that if we detect an unusual track, there's a set process that we go through in relation to contacting the boat and seeing if they're okay, and then maybe bringing other boats in. The reality is if someone falls off the boat, they're probably not going to survive, because by the time it all happens, it just takes too long. So it's a tricky situation, but we don't normally, the moment something happens, we think, oh, what's going on? So you got to remember that when you're watching the tracker. If you see something unusual going on, look at the weather. That's the first thing. See where the wind is, and if it's light winds, they're not going anywhere. Maybe we've got a hint from one of the text messages coming back that they've lost a halyard, or they can't sail for the moment, or like Igor with his steering. So different things, but we certainly do monitor everything ourselves from an organisational point of view. Another question was, are there Iridium holes in the South Atlantic? Because you've been listening to some of the Iridium phone calls that we have. Now Iridium, there's two types of satellite systems for mariners in the world. One is Inmarsat and the other is Iridium, and in concept they're completely different. Iridium uses a network of satellites all around the world. Okay, there's a lot of them. I forget exactly how many, but they're everywhere. And the idea originally when that system was conceived was to actually send your phone signal to an Iridium satellite, say in the Atlantic, and if you were calling Australia, it would bounce from satellite to satellite to satellite until it got over Australia and then drop down to Australia, and it would be a cheap phone call because it didn't have to use the terrestrial phone lines going across. Nowadays the phone calls over the world are so cheap they don't do it. It just goes up and down and links in, and there you go. So there's a whole network, and it gives you coverage all around the world. But I've experienced little holes everywhere where it's not quite right. on Iridium. I've used it a lot. The other system is Inmarsat. They use what's called geostationary satellites. So they're above the Earth. They don't move. They just sit in a fixed position, and they have a footprint. And as long as you're in the footprint, it's okay. When you get to the edges of that footprint of reception, you can fade out, and you won't get coverage. So generally, Iridium's okay. But I have experienced some poor reception areas, especially around the equator region and so on. But more than likely, every time it's happening on the boats, it's possibly because the guys are calling from down below, even though they're fiberglass boats, and the signal will go through the deckhead, through the cabin top. It's better if they're outside, and they're all getting into that now. So we're confident that the Iridium phone will give us very good safety coverage and reliable coverage all the way around the world. They actually have 2 phones, so that's not too bad as well. Okay, sextant and timepiece. Okay, people are asking about, and I'll go through a sextant later on. All a sextant does is measure an angle. There's nothing special about a sextant. It just measures an angle from the sun to your eye and to the horizon. And I've got a sextant later. I'll show you how it works, and it's very easy. But it is very relevant to the timepiece. Okay, and a few people have even asked about the Ralphtech watches that some of the guys are using. So there is no electric clocks. There's no battery-powered clocks. It's all got to be manual. This is actually this one here is an automatic Night WRX 2004. Not the year. That's the model. It's the Ralphtech watch. It's purely mechanical, so it's wind-up, very accurate, but they'll still lose a little bit of time. So you have to rate it. Okay, you have to watch how much time it's losing over a period, and you build that into your time calculation. Jane's actually got, where's yours? And so a few of them are using this. Jane's got a Ranger, that's a Academy Ranger, and I know Uku's got that one, and I think Tapio's got that one as well. And again, it's a wind-up watch. So then some of them have got a ship's chronometer, which is a gimbaled clock, so you wind it every 4 days. It's got a 7-day spring on it, to keep it going. And that means that if everything else failed, they damaged their radio equipment, couldn't get a time signal, they can use those purely mechanical watches and clocks to do their celestial navigation. Okay, what have we got here? Waste. A few people want to know what happens to the rubbish. Do they keep it on board? And basically, yes, everything is kept on board. But what we did as an organisation for the race is we required every entrant to give us a waste management plan. So they've had to estimate the amount of rubbish they have on board. And so, as an example, and this brings in another thing in a minute. Some of them have got food in glass jars like this. Some have got tins, obviously. Some have got freeze-dried meals. They've all got various packaging and so on. So they have to estimate how much rubbish they've got, tell us where they're going to store it, how it's going to go, all those sorts of things, and make sure it comes back with them. And if we want to, they'll actually give us all their rubbish, and then we can weigh it and all that sort of stuff as well. So they do have a management plan. Everything stays on board. I'll move straight to the next question. Some have asked, are they using all freeze-dried food? These are the freeze-dried foods. A lot of them are using freeze-dried, but they've then got to go a lot of water to reconstitute that. And it's nice because it's light to carry, but you've got to find the water. And it's okay to eat. I've lived on this stuff for a long period of time, and it gets a bit bland and boring after a while, but a lot of them have got it. A lot have got cans, and a lot have got dry food and things like that. The beauty about France is, I've got to tell you, they have seriously good canned food. Now, this company here, and it's not an advert for them, but let's call it Company A, they do their really cool food in cans, and they also do it as what you and I would call TV dinners. So it's in a plastic container. You put it in the microwave and heat it up, and bingo, you're there. First of all, the food inside it is fantastic. It's not American TV dinner. It's not even Australian TV dinner. It's French TV dinner, and the food is unbelievable. Jean-Luc's using a lot of them. He's got like 500 microwave TV dinners, and no microwave, so he boils it he brings it to the boil, right, in the seawater. As soon as it's boiling, he stops for 10 minutes, and then after it's been sitting there for 10 minutes, he brings it back to the boil again, right? And when it's back to the boil, he leaves it for 5 minutes, and then he eats it. He doesn't have to get any water. It's a little bit heavier because all the moisture's in it, but it's great food. Susie had a classic. Had a friend here in Les Sables d'Olonne, runs like a restaurant. He actually cooked, I don't know how many, 300 or 350 meals And these are like preserving jars. You know, when you preserve things in them, you seal them up, put them in a pressure cooker, and they're bigger jars than this, but all of these home-cooked meals are in jars, and they're all sealed, ready to go. So it keeps in all the vitamins, minerals, flavour, taste, all that stuff. So everyone's got something different, and they've all got different ideas. I know Nabil dried his own food and so on. So, so lots of different ideas there and different ways to handle it. On the water side, someone actually did ask, what do they do for water? They can take as much water as they want when they leave, but obviously water's heavy. I suppose on average, I'd say from what I saw, most were carrying about 70 to 100 gallons of water, something like that. It's not necessarily enough to get all the way around the world. It won't get there. They've got to catch water. The surprising part is that Gregor, for instance, he'd caught 15 litres of water. That's all. And he's out of the doldrums now. He thought he would have been topped up. In the first month, most of them used about 100 litres of water. There was a real dry run. You know, a lot of people didn't catch much water going through the doldrums, so that'll make it a little bit harder to get it when in the Southern Ocean, things like that. But Robin did it. So Robin did it in Suhaili on the way around, so I'm sure they'll be fine. But that was surprising. Whether it's climate change or whatever, who knows? You'd have to say, too, that generally they got a pretty good run through the doldrums. It was a very small area that they went through, so... So that was it. One question here from one guy, Hans van der Egen, about he loves following these sorts of races. He loves seeing the live video and the photographs. He would love, and we've got a good following on GGR, but he's saying we would probably get more if we had satellite photos and video and so on. It'll never happen. It's a reality. They didn't have it in 1968. None of the entrants wanted it in this race either. No one wants a satellite dome. We looked at the possibility of, on special occasions, sending satellite photos out, but we didn't want to kill the concept. So, hang on, Jane's giving me, what's wrong?
You want to stop this section on another one because we're breaking.
Okay, so we got a problem with the internet here, so I'm going to shut it down here and see what's going on. So stand by.